Hey everyone, good afternoon. My name is Rick Storlie from Builder Lead Converter, and welcome to Pricing Mastery Simplified. 5 things you must know, 7 mistakes to avoid, and the only 4 ways to increase profit. This is brought to you by Builder Lead Converter and 4 Level Coach. And I want to introduce the man of the hour, Randy Stanbury from 4 Level Coach. Randy, good afternoon.
Hey, Rick, thanks, man. Thanks for having us. We always enjoy. This is one of our, I would say, our top favorite webinars that we do. We do a number of them, but this is the one that makes and breaks us.
You know, this is such a pertinent topic too. As we were talking about a little bit before the webinar started, we're kind of getting double-edged sword right now as it relates to pricing. Number one, we have a lot of very price-sensitive leads that are balking when we present pricing, and obviously there's an affordability issue that builders have been dealing with for several years. But there's also the other side of that coin, which is builders cutting margins to try to appease that price-sensitive buyer and not leaving any meat on the table, which I know you're going to dive deep into as well. So I'm going to try to present a little bit some ideas for you guys of how you can present your prices to your leads where they see maximum value of what you're offering from them. And Randy's really going to focus on the back end of talking about, again, how to structure your pricing so that you are a profitable builder and you're able to scale your business and continue to grow in the areas you want to grow. So with that said, we've got people joining us here. Hello, Mike from Detroit. Hello, Eric. Hello, Morgan. Hello, Amin. And if you are, a couple of questions here before we get started, but we'd just like to know a little bit more about the audience. If you are a home builder, would you go ahead and just type a 1 in the comment section here? We'd like to know how many home builders we have. So type a 1 if you are a home builder. If you are a remodeler, go ahead and type a 2. And if you do both, give us a 3. So a 1, 2, or a 3. Kyle, welcome. Good to see you. We got Kyle as a home builder. Again, if you're a home builder, type a 1, remodeler, type a 2. And if you do both, type a 3. Now, if you are something other than that, go ahead and tell us what that is. So if we have any architects in here, designers, if you're a specialty remodeler, please let us know. Ryan, thank you. So we have, looks like a good mix here, actually. Probably a little bit heavier on remodeling or people that do both remodeling and home building. That's great. Lance, thank you. Outdoor living as well. So that's great. So Randy, I'm excited to jump into this and see what you have here. And I know just for all of you that are attending here as well, Randy has some really great tools, some specific things that he's going to offer up you guys here at the end of the webinar that's going to help you master your pricing. So Randy, without further ado, let's jump into it.
All right. Yeah, let's get at this. There's a lot of content to cover, so we'll dive right into it. So for those of you that may not know us or who I am or a 4-Level Coach, we work specifically with builders, remodelers. Typically, we're doing somewhere around the $1 to $10 million mark, and we help grow and scale to that 25 million plus. And really, the big key to the whole thing is while removing you from the day-to-day operation. Now, if you are under that million mark, we have an amazing program that's extremely affordable. We know we don't have piles of cash to afford to spend on, coaching and tools and systems. So we have what we call our farm system. We work with builders, remodelers that are doing under $1 million to help them get beyond that first $1 million mark, which is, typically that first place that we need to get to. So just a brief, quick story here. I started my first business in 95. I always say by 98, I knew enough to know that I didn't know nearly enough, right? And I think that's important for us all to realize that, hey, there's lots of stuff we just don't know we don't know. And that's something I had to realize. I realized it in 98. I got my first business coach. We did our first $1 million in that year as well, but it took from there till 2007 to get to what I refer to as ultimate freedom. Ultimate freedom to me is ultimate freedom of time and money. I was able to remove myself entirely from that business. It ran and operated on its own without me for the next 10 years. Literally, I did not spend one full day in that business during that time. I went and built and scaled other businesses at that time. I went and sold that core business in 2017, which really led me to say, hey, I want to share what I've learned to do to get myself removed to, make a lot of money in business, be able to scale and sell a business, and then show others how to do that. So I started this in 2019, 4-Level Coach. And so I'm going to share with you today, really one of the key essentials is pricing. Knowing your numbers, getting your numbers right is all part of pricing. It's not just getting an estimate out the door. It's knowing where those numbers come from and why we need them. A few different books that we've written: 10 Reasons Why Builders Remodelers Fail to Grow, The Sales System, The Elite Builder Sales System, The Small Business Freedom Formula. I wrote that after I sold my business in 2017. It is the #1 bestseller on Amazon. All these books are on Amazon. We have our podcast. If you're a podcast listener, jump into the Building Freedom podcast there if you want that. And coming soon, we have our latest book, should be out in the next few weeks. Pricing Mastery will be on Amazon shelves before long. It's going to cover, that book goes way deeper on everything we're going to cover here today. Just from legitimacy, we have a number of inner circle partnerships that we work with, people that we have stake in their business across the country, and our brand partners, of course, including Rick with Builder Lead Converter here. And we love our partnerships because really we need us all as a whole for true success, right? What Rick does, what we do, and others and other partnerships that we have really help create enormous success in the industry. We have a couple of, people, and I'll share more on this later, but, a couple examples of taking someone from, 200K, which that, below the million, to a couple $1 million in a couple of years. And, someone that's at 2 million to $8 million. And it's all about the numbers and percentages. So what I'm going to share with you today is how you grow and scale a business. Is essential that you get your numbers and pricing right first. You can't do this without what we're going to share. As Rick mentioned, we have some really killer bonuses. This complete pricing guide that I'm going to share with you guys at the end. I mean, this thing is chocked full of everything we're going to talk about. It's a 24-page document. It's a digital document, so there's all kinds of links and tools available in that as well. And also we'll end up offering a free coaching session and our pricing for profit tool at the end of this thing. We always say, if you don't have a pen and paper in front of you, something to write on, grab one. We're going to go through this stuff kind of very quickly in rapid fire. We refer to this as our Sweet 16. The 5 things we must know, the 7 common mistakes, and the only 4 ways to increase profit. We're going to go through each one of these. That's what we're covering in that entire pricing guide as well. This is really the guts and the core of it all. Number one thing that we must know as we start going through this is the difference between markup and margin, right? So if this one is new to us, this will be worth your hour right here, right? It really truly is. Just understanding that our markup is not getting us our margin, right? And if we look at our graph here, we've got, a 20% margin is actually a 16.67%, or sorry, a 20% markup is a 16.67 margin. Now that's important because many of us are out there, throwing numbers around at 20 to 25% markups, figuring that that's enough. And I'm going to show you why that's usually never enough. And this is why knowing pricing has a lot to do with understanding our numbers and how our business currently operates on the financial side, right? So we're going to tie in these two, which gets to number 2 is how to properly read and understand. I don't just mean read, but fully understand a P&L. What these numbers are. Now, I just have a simple example up here of our sale price or top line. Obviously, we hear top line. Well, that's our revenue. But when we look at it's minus our cost of goods sold gives us our gross profit. Now, I'm going to go through everything we're going to talk about today is, yes, about the dollars, but almost more importantly, it's about the percentages. And most of the time, builders, remodelers, especially the ones we work with early on, they're not percentage centric, right? We need to start understanding our business on percentage basis. we can improve percentage. That's what will make us a whole lot more money. So, understanding how to read this, knowing what it means to us and how to make good decisions from our P&L is critical to understanding how to price properly, right? For real profitability, right? So going through this, I'm going to circle back to P&Ls as we go through this and tie back why it's so important that we know number two. Number three is your monthly cost of overhead expenses. We must know, one, we've got to allocate our expenses properly in our P&L. If we don't have that right to begin with, we're likely looking at some false data, and some of the things that we're going to talk about do not make sense, right? So one of the things we must know, though, is what is our monthly cost of operating our business? And if we don't understand that, how can we possibly understand what gross profits we need and what percentages we need to make money, right? So this is number one key here. Now, number four is your break even and understanding how to calculate that break even percentage. And essentially calculating that break even percentage is understanding our monthly overhead, which we understand that we must know. We must know how to read and understand that P&L. We must understand markups and margins. And if we understand that, then we can get our break even percentage up, which is our monthly or annual overhead expense divided by our monthly revenue or annual revenue, right? That will spit you out a break-even percentage. Now, this example here, remember this number, 24.5%. It's going to be important as we talk about, why pricing at certain levels will never make us any money. And I'm going to show you an exact example and why this didn't make this person money, right? This business itself. So that's an example. All right, so there's your break even. Understand how to get your break even number, and then how to calculate, that gross profit. So how to calculate gross profit. We go through an example here, and I use simple math and simple numbers, right? So if we had $10,000 and we mark it up by 20%, we then have an outcome or a price point of $12,000. Well, the markup was $2,000 of that 12, right? So the 20% markup, the 2,000 represents 20% of 10,000. Thing is, we're looking at our markup as in conjunction with our revenue, which is 12 grand. So if we take that 2,000 divided by the 12, this is where we get that 16.6. Remember we said it was actually 16.67, right? So a gross profit of 16.6 with a 20% markup. So that's how to understand how to calculate that. That's extremely important to know as we move forward here. And I gave examples, 30% markup, 23% gross profit, right? 40% markup, 28.5. Very, very important to know this as we move forward. I'll show you why here shortly, right? So a lot of what we're going to talk about here, they start to correlate together and they start syncing together, right? It will all start connecting the dots as we move through each one of these. So there's our first 5 of the things that we must know. If we know those things already, you're off to the races. If some of those things are vague, not understandable, you got to dive deeper and make sure you know those. Now, common pricing practice that, of course, we see in the industry is we take our costs and we put a markup on it. In this case, simple example, right, of a basement renovation, round figures, $100,000 cost, right? Now, if we put a 30% markup, which sounds pretty reasonable, I should make money on that. Well, in this case, when I look at the gentleman that we actually used this example for, and I knew their break-even percentage, and I said, you cannot make money at that. We're going to show you why. Now, when you understand your percentages, what will happen is we can predict in advance the outcome we're going to get. And I showed this gentleman the outcome, and the outcome is a net profit of losing money by $1,850. It's going to cost him $1,850 to do this job. And that is shocking when we say, well, that's a 30% markup. I should be making money. Why? How do I know that? Well, I know that because remember that break even. So in this example, that was exact numbers we used before of this gentleman's outcome. So he had a break even of 24.5%, right? Well, we remember what a 30% markup is. 30% markup was 23% margin. Well, we're going to lose 1.5 points. In this case, exactly 1.4% is going out the door. If you go to work at this job, it's going to cost you money, right? Because you have to run your business. It seems like a lot of money. I got 30 grand left over, but we have overheads, and the numbers do not lie when we know our numbers. Now, Rick started this by saying, look, sometimes we have to slash our prices in order to get jobs. And I promise you, if you do that, it will cost you money unless you know your numbers. If you know your numbers, then slash them to the point that you can still make money. But don't not know your numbers and slash your price to get the work, because you might as well sit at home. Now, I usually say to people, hey, guys, you'd be better off to have $1,000 in your pocket, give it to the gentleman and say, I cannot take your job. I'd rather give you $1,000 right now and not quote this job because it's going to save me $850, right? Now that, it sounds crazy, but it's true. And we see this every day. So when we're helping business,
we call it, we built that home for practice.
Sorry?
We had a term for that. We called it, we built that home for practice.
Built that home for practice.
Yeah, I needed the practice. So I paid the client to do it.
We've seen a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Right. And we've had enough practice, and I hope everyone else has. And if you're on here, you're on here for a reason. You're on here to hopefully pick up a few gems and insights. This first section hopefully is a little bit of a, oh my God, yes, I got to know my numbers. And here's the scary thing. 96 to 98% of builders do not know their numbers. So we're out there pricing jobs without knowing these percentages, and we're hoping that we're going to win. And then we wonder why we don't have money at the end of the day in the bank account, and we can't grow and scale. Guys, we cannot grow and scale businesses if we can't make more money to build our teams. To spend the money we need to spend with Rick to get more good opportunities and leads in the door, right? To get qualified people in the door. So we've got to do the right things right. This is part of the process. So let's move on to the 7 common mistakes. Now, keep in mind, we need to know those first 5, and then we get to the 7 common. Now, the 7 common, part of this will start tying in, and you'll see why. One of the common mistakes is we're pricing with a markup, right? We're using a markup without knowing our overheads. It's impossible to know what markup you require if you don't know your numbers. So that's a mistake we must avoid. Number 2, I mentioned this earlier. We're misallocating expenses in our P&L. All right, so we're often having misallocations of our expenses in our P&L, meaning we have some things in overhead that should be COGS or COGS that should be in overheads. And as long as we have misallocation, then everything I'm going to share with you today that we should know and understand is just it's misallocated data. The data is not correct. We cannot make good decisions. So if we're running our business like truly entrepreneurial with a scaled mindset, we need profitability. We always say we need profit before growth, systems before people, right? So if we're truly getting profit before growth, then we need to know these numbers, get our allocations right. So there's a base and foundation we need. It's going to show you what we do with people over the first 30 days working with them. And we do this deep dive diagnostic. We're figuring out this stuff. We have to get this stuff figured out. If we don't have this foundation, it's impossible to grow and scale a business profitably. Number 3 is not capturing project management in our COGS, right? So we have them in overhead expense, not in COGS. Why is that important? Because project management is a direct related cost to a project. And that, therefore, it needs to be included as a cost to the project. Yet, we think of it as an afterthought. And often, if we are the owner and project manager, we don't see ourselves as a cost because sometimes we don't pay ourselves enough money, right? So we're like, hey, I don't need to charge more money for project management. I'll do it. But if that's the mindset, I can never go hire a project manager and make money. I can't build my team. So this is critically important to get our project management up in cost of goods. Therefore, we start thinking about them as a cost. We add it to the cost of the project, right? That $100,000 basement without project management fee likely needed to be a cost of $106,000, or whatever that number is, right? And therefore, we're going to put a markup on that 1.6, and it's not 30, it's probably 40. And all of a sudden, we have a very different price for that basement for us to be profitable. This changes the game. Number 3 is a game changer. Number 4, that whole thing of confusing markup and gross profit, right? Markup and margin. But here's the thing. Margin is what we're hoping to get. Gross profit is the reality in our P&L after the fact of doing the work. That's the gross profit is actually what shows up in our P&L. And now we can look at them as percentages because we have true numbers. Now I have to start understanding what my true numbers are and not confuse putting a markup on something when I needed true margins, right? And where I get that data from. So remember, if we know those first 5, we start avoiding these mistakes. This is making sense? I hope it's if it's sitting in, it's got, there's some things I'm not doing. And this is why, oh my God, why I might need to change up the game a little bit and start to know some of these things, right? And we'll share why we struggle to know these things here shortly too. Because this industry, there's thousands of moving parts, hundreds per day, right? So, it's no fault of our own that we are running around chasing our tail half the time when we need to slow down to speed up. We need to do some of these stuff and get this dialed in first. We'll share how you do that in a minute here. Number 5 is a mistake of underestimating our true cost of labor, right? This one, it seems obvious enough, but when we ask, hey, if you pay someone $30 an hour, what do they truly cost you? Now, I try to ask that question almost with every new client we have. And, far too often it's deer in headlights. I can say, look, I just told you I pay him $30 an hour. What do you mean? What do they cost me? Well, we mean the labor burden. Like, are we including the tax? Are we including the fact that they can only be billable for 6 hours a day with good hours? Are we paying them for meetings and things that are we including that in price? Somebody has to pay for that, right? So the client has to pay for that. That increases the burden rate for each person on an hourly basis. So, as we go through this and we look at stats and vacation pay, and, we don't have, workman's comp or WSIB on here, or, in Canada, we need to capture it all, and we need to understand what that is. Now, typically, round figure, if you don't want to go through and use the calculator, which again is all in that download, by the way, everything we're talking about is in the download broken down, and it is digital. So all of this stuff you can actually use. It's not just an image. So the bottom line is this. It's approximately 1.5% of what you're paying, or 1.5 multiplied by 1.5. So $30 is around 45 is a true cost. Right? If we're $60, so it's around, if we're paying somebody, we'll say $40, they're around $60 on the labor burden, right? Now, and if you're thinking about marking that up, if you mark that up 20%, you're not making much money per hour per person, right? So we have to really understand, what is our true cost of labor? Are we making any money on this? And from what we see when we're self-performing work, we are far too often not making any money on our self-performed labor, right? And that's a big gap, big hole, has to be fixed. Number 6 is, we'll go through here and we'll say, not comparing estimates to actuals, or not job costing, right? Not job costing properly during and after the project. It is insanity to me that we are going so fast to get to the next thing that we just spit out more estimates because we got to get them out the door, yet we never took the time to see, how did our estimate even compare to what we thought it was going to be? Because the truth is, what is actual and real is almost never what we thought it was going to be, yet we keep doing the same thing over and over and finding the same mistakes. That's where it's costing us money. So even if you do price some of this stuff right, but you're not comparing what you thought your costs were, right, what it would take you to do a project, then we're bleeding there. So hey, this is a tough industry. There's a lot of places that we can bleed cash. There's a lot of places, and we've got to get this dialed in, or we just, that's why we say profit before growth. Get the numbers right, get the pricing right, then think about growth. Because all we're doing is multiplying the bleed if we continue to try and grow.
So Randy, before you jump into your next one here, just want to let everyone know, I think we're roughly about halfway through. We're going to save some time at the end here for question and answers. So please type any questions you have into the comment section, and we will try to get through all of them.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And yeah, still lots to cover too. So let's get through this. Number 7, pricing based on false overhead. Far too often I hear, I have very low overhead, and therefore, I can price things cheaper, right? I can spit out numbers that are cheaper because I have very low overhead. I have next to nothing. I don't have an office. I don't have, a bookkeeper. I don't have, I do all that stuff myself. And we always say, as long as you continue to operate and price jobs from low overhead, that's what you will be able to afford. Right? So if you want to grow your business and put the right overhead in place that's required to grow and scale a business, we need to act as if it's already there. Because we're operating from this low overhead that's giving us false costs. We're pricing from it to give the client the gift. Now, you might make some money on it, but it's never going to be enough to build your real team. So as long as we're priced from a low overhead, remember that's what you will always be able to afford. Thinking differently and just saying, hey, if I had a bookkeeper, if I had the things that I want and need in my overhead, what would my overhead be? That's where I need to start thinking about pricing my jobs from. Right? Consider that one. It's a little bit of an interesting thought. You can win jobs at lower prices, but will that actually get you to where you want to go? Here, I'll throw this in quickly. If we don't know where we're going, meaning we don't have a vision and goals, right? Then this will work because it doesn't matter. We don't have a vision. We don't know where we're going anyway. So let's just keep doing what we're doing. All right. So vision is also key. I'm going to get into the 4 ways to increase net profit. I'm also going to show you in a real world example calculator as we walk through how each one of these ways will take your net profit to another level and how they start compounding on each other. So as we get into this, this is the 4 ways. There's 4x to 10x. And like, follow me through this. This should be an eye opener for most. So think about, these 4 ways can 10x our net profit. We'll prove that. Now, job cost. Remember, we went back to that same job. We're going to use this job as baseline, right? That basement we talked about as a job cost of $100K. We put a markup of $30K with a sale price of $130. Remember, that gave us a gross profit of 23.08 gross profit. Now, in this case, this person we're using as a baseline would have a break even of 20%. Remember, the example we showed you was 24.5%, and therefore they lost money. But even in this example, with a break even of 20, now how do we know what our break even is? Remember, that was one of our first 5. We have to know that. When you know that, you can actually predict what your net profit is going to be. So in this case, our net profit is going to be 3.08% or $4,000 if we do this job based on that break even. Now, I would strongly suggest that that is very, very tight. That's a lot of work to do. That's a lot of project to handle to generate 3%. Now, if we are generating that 3%, that's provided that we don't make any mistakes or we didn't underestimate our cost. Because if we did, that 4,000 is gone, right? So all of a sudden we're at 0 or less, right? So that's not enough to run and operate our business, right? So when we go back to saying, hey, right now we got to slash prices, or we got to price a little tighter. We have to show up differently so we can sell higher price jobs, or we might as well go work for someone else because we're never going to make it. Now, increasing price. Rick alluded to it and talked about it earlier. It is extremely important that we increase price by getting, one, the right client who is willing to pay more, and you have to separate yourself from your competition, which is what Rick is suggesting, showing up differently. Now, if you like to grab our book, the Elite Builder Sales System, there's 5 weapons in there. We call them secret weapons to closing more deals, higher price point. The point is in showing this book is that, look, if we cannot increase price, we cannot take the business to the next level. It's impossible. Now, how do we do that? We have to show up differently. So what does increasing price do, right? We know increasing price, like, look, that's pretty easy math. We increase price, of course, we're going to make more money. Randy, what are you talking about? Okay, that's fine. I hear that, but I'm going to show you how and why, and then we're going to show you the compound effect of the other 3. That's really the critical point. So job cost stays the same, but the markup went up. We added 10 grand markup. We went to $40,000 markup, which increased sale price to $140, right? Now we have a gross profit of 28.57%, and we still have that same break even of 20%. So what did it do? It took our net profit of 8.57, we have a net profit of 8.57, or 12 grand, 11,998, right? Now that is a significant difference from 4,000. And most of the time, this is exactly what we need to do as builders, well, as remodelers out there. We need a 40% markup almost always to make money, right? And we have to operate our business. If you're operating at 24.5, like the first scenario, and not 20, well, we're still in trouble, right? It's still not a lot of money. So that's why, to run your business and make good, better business decisions, we have to understand percentages. We have to understand how to make decisions to decrease break even, increase top line, increase bottom line. And remember, I said you got to be percentage centric. If you want to be a great entrepreneur and run your business, you got to understand percentages better than you ever have before, right? And that's what the 4-level coach does, and why we can help people get to the next level, because we're helping you put all the pieces together to do that, and then understand how to make the decisions to move forward to do that. That's the critical piece. So in this case, we went from 4,000 net profit to 12,000 net profit by increasing price, right? Big difference, big deal. Now, number 2 is increasing monthly and annual revenue. Now, again, as we increase monthly revenue, what's it going to do? Well, I know this makes sense to me, but what does it actually do? Well, what it does is decrease our break even. It decreases our break even percentage, right? So we need to create a business that generates more work at higher price points with a team that can fulfill on increased volume. That's great. That's the piece right there. That would take care of number 1 and 2. Now, remember, what does it do? It decreases break even. Why does it do that? Because my monthly overhead stayed the same, but my monthly revenue went up. So overhead same, revenue goes up. There's your math. Break even comes down. When break even comes down, my profitability therefore goes up. That's the connection I want you to make, right? So let's look at what number 2 does. Increase monthly and annual revenue. Remember, we already have increased price. So we're starting with this increased sale price of 140. Same job cost again. Same gross profit. But what did it do? It took our break even down to 15%. So if we can operate our business tighter, better, more effective, more efficient, bring that break even down to 15. And guys, these are truly the numbers that we see every day, and the businesses that we help achieve these. If you're a remodeler, a builder is going to have different numbers, right? In this case, we're at 15% break even. I'll tell you this, builders a really, really effective builder can get down to 3% break even, right? That's why we can charge lesser, because our volume is so high for a small team, right? Now, the percentages is everything. So net profit in this case, guys, 13.57% now. Now we're starting to play in the game we need to play at to make some money and actually be able to build a team. Now we got a gross or a net profit here of $19,000, right? 18,998. Remember, we went from 4,000 to 12, and now we're at 19 by doing two things and being a better entrepreneur to know how to do those things and move those needles, right? That's critically important. So now, as we move on to number 3, remember, these things are compounding on each other. They're syncing with each other, and we're starting to run our business much more like an owner and not an operator in the field, right? Now, number 3, again, as you can imagine, number 3 would be, what if we could, while we did number 1 and 2, we decrease monthly and annual overhead. Now, we can do this very easily. We have a tool called the spending assessment tool, and typically we can find dollars that we're just spending that we have no need for, that are not helping our business in any way. So there are small pieces that we can take out of there fairly easily without making any effect. Now, I will also suggest that some people, many of us, cannot decrease overhead when we're running small businesses that we don't have enough overhead to begin with, right? So there are cases that we need to be doing that might not be your play today, right? But I'm telling you, over the long run, they all need to become your play. It just depends on where you're at the time. Now, we need to become more and more effective and efficient with internal processes and systems that decrease our overhead. This is when we talk systems before people. It's all sitting in here. There's gold in number 3. Now, why does this make us more net profit? What does it do? It helps bring that break even down even more, because now we've reduced overhead, we've increased monthly revenue, we're now even reduced break even more than what we did before. The compound effect of this starts to work, right? Remember, it was 4x to 10x. That's what we're trying to achieve here. And don't think for a second that this seems crazy and impossible, because we do it every day. And in fact, you cannot do it. You cannot grow and scale without doing these things, right? So number 3, let's go back through the math. Remember, $140,000 sale price, same job cost, right? That number 1 was $140,000. We also, number 2, we brought down that break even once. Now we're going to bring it down twice. Remember, we were at 20% originally. We're now at 10%. And this is real. This can happen. This is possible when you do the right things right in the business and make the right decisions, right? So you can get down to 10%. Remember, we have the same gross profit we had before. We just were pissing it away in too much break even, right? We couldn't get that number. We're operating too high, right? So net profit, 18.57 now. Now we're playing in the game where we should be. Remodelers should be in that 15 to 20% range. Can you do more? Yes. Are we working with people that do more? 100,000%, 22 to 25% is what we see on net profit when you can really get at it, right? As a remodeler, builders are going to be more around the 8 to 12%. Some might even get up to 15 when they're really doing it. Volume and really tight run operations, right? Now, here's the thing. Now we're at 25.9 or 25,998 or 26,000. So remember, we went from 4,000. We're now all the way up to 26,000. And I know you're probably questioning me going, this doesn't seem right. This seems crazy. It's not. This is reality. This is what we need. And we need to be doing 18. This is what's holding you back, is not knowing your numbers and not pricing jobs right. And then maybe on the sales system is not showing up to be able to close deals at that higher price point anyway, right? So all of these things have to be in place. Now, number 4, this is the final kind of nail. Now, we'll say decrease the cost of our job. And of course, this doesn't apply if you're doing cost plus projects, right? We can't decrease the job and make more money there, where it's based on our job cost, right? On a cost plus. However, now I want to be clear with this. We need to price our job based on market value of what that material cost and cost of that job should be. Then we need to get more effective, more efficient with a well-oiled machine here that, one, commands better buying power and what we refer to as a one ecosystem job site. When we have a one ecosystem job site where everyone is working more effectively and efficiently, we all become more profitable. Why is that? Because we're decreasing the cost of that job that we thought it was going to cost us or that it should cost us, and we priced it based on a higher cost. Then we operate our business better. We take advantage of margins and buying power, and we spend less. We shop better. We do a better job of that. We paid less on the actual job. We increased price from the beginning. We did more revenue. We decreased overhead, and we decreased our job costs. These four come together, and what does it do? This is the end result. And when I say you can get to 15 to 20% plus on net profit, it is the truth. And here it is. We can get down. Remember, our break even is now 10%, right? But what did it do? We actually, this is the change up here. Number 4 actually should be in red up here so you can see what we actually changed. The job cost changed. The job cost dropped by $3,000. Remember, it was 100,000 all the way through. Well, it went to $3,000, but now we have a markup now of 43 because we already had the 4. We're just taking that extra 3,000 as ours. It goes right to our bottom line, right? So now we have the same sale price, but we have a gross profit of 30.71%. Now that's operating a business. Now with that, we have that break even of 10. We now have a net profit of 20.71. We understand market versus margin. We're now at almost $29,000 on that 100,000 original job cost. Now we're operating at a net profit at 20.71. This is reality. You can go from 4 to 29, and it takes a hell of a lot of the right things right in your business to make that happen. But guys, what I'm trying to drop here, what I'm trying to have you understand is this is a reality. You can do it. You need to know how to get there. What we shared with you, you must start thinking about and implementing. So I'll walk through. I got a couple more minutes to finish up here, and then we'll get into some Q&A. So this 4 ways, right? We said we were going to go from 4x to 10x. Here's the thing. What you saw here is we went from 4,000 to 29,000. Well, that's not quite 10x, Randy, right? You said we can go to 10x. Well, you can, because then you start scaling this thing, right? Now you're going to start building a business that can actually go to the next level. You grow and scale this thing at this level. That's how you far more than 10x. I promise you that. Now, here's the thing. Before we're going to go any further, what we are doing too often, and this is the metaphor that we use. Imagine putting all the cash in the backseat of your truck. What we're currently doing by not slowing down to speed up, going 100 miles an hour to the next thing, the next job, not job costing, and not having the time for it, because it's like, I know how many moving parts there are and how busy we are, right? We are busy. But while we're being busy, we have cash blown out the back window of our truck as we're trying to grow our business. We need to put a stop to that. What we see and what we know is if you have a goal of getting across the ocean or across the other side in a boat that's full of holes and is leaking, we have a lot harder time bailing water to ever get there. In fact, we never get there because that's all we end up doing is bailing water, right? And that bailing water feels like the hamster wheel, where we are just going 100 miles an hour, but truly not getting anywhere, right? We all know that scenario. So what we say, hey, we all know we have holes in the boat. In fact, every business that we've ever worked with has holes in the boat, right? So if you want to stop the bleeding, get off the hamster wheel, we have our success system. Of course, you're on a webinar. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how we can help you with some of these things, right? So with the success system, we have our mastery series. The mastery series is basically 300 plus videos, tools, templates, spreadsheets, training guides, checklists, all of the things that you need to make the good decisions from, but we don't have the tools for. Remember back in 98, I knew enough to know I didn't know nearly enough. I needed this stuff, right? So this is what we're handing you. as well as we do a 10-point diagnostic. Now that 10-point diagnostic is to find all of the bleeding of cash, where the holes are in the boat, because we know it's bleeding, we know it's blown out the back window. Let us figure out where is all of that bleeding. And we have a 10-point diagnostic. We know the 10 areas that are bleeding cash. You also get coaching sessions, of course, to help you through this, and a community. So that is the key to it all. Now, next thing is our track record of going through that diagnostic. These are real numbers. There's money everywhere. $177,000 in 17 days. Drew, we found 329,000. Jeff, 417. Guys, there is a ton of cash that is blown out the back window of the truck that we need to capture. Now, Dan, you can see here from Dan's review that he posted. They found I know it sounds crazy. They found $30K a month that they were missing by mismanaging projects, not charging the right money. Literally, this was the second call we had with them, and it was like, oh my God, there is a ton of money being lost. Now they had multiple projects, but guys, the money is there. I have to uncover that. We'll go back to these two, right? Profitability. We get profit up. Now he's still not where he needs to be at 2 million, right? At 2 million, 12% is still not quite there, but he's heading in the right direction. Before long, he'll be at that 15 to 20, right? And even here, we're at 7% net. When we said we should be at 8 to 12 plus, right? This takes a machine. It takes time. The percentages in profit will get there. If your builder remodeler will do the same for you, guys, at the end of the day, we offer a free business assessment. Jump on a call with me. We have our bonuses that we're going to give you. And one of those things we talked about was a free coaching session. So you can jump on a free session of ours, get the pricing for profit tool. This tool is all the formulas built out. You just have to put in 4 numbers and we'll tell you exactly what you need to price to make money. All right. So that tool is gold. And then on that call, we'll rip through a handful of things, go through money, time, team, systems, your strategy, etc. So the session costs you nothing. Look, we also have nothing to gain if we don't help you, because we have a guarantee on finding you some cash. Right. So we typically have, if you're over $1 million, $50,000 guarantee that where we find 50K that's falling through the cracks. If we don't, then we'll give your money back on the movement forward. So guys, there's, money back, downloads. There's our download. So download in the resources here. We should have Rick, Katie should be thrown in chat.
Yep, she did. So for those of you that asked that wanted the download, I think that was Robin, you asked for a copy. Eric, you asked for a copy. It is in the comment section right now. Katie put a link in there. She also put a link in there for Randy's calendar where you can schedule your business assessment. And one thing I'm going to say too, I work on the front end. Obviously, we're working on the client acquisition, bringing opportunities to the table for our builder partners. I can tell you without a doubt that any builder that's engaged with a coach like Randy is going to take everything that we do and they're going to 10x it again as well. Because once you get your systems working in the back end, you can scale and your numbers, and you're just so much more successful. So really, if you want to say, hey, I need more leads, or I need higher quality leads, or I need change my sales process, get the back end functioning first. So then when you get those opportunities in front of you, you can take advantage of them and be profitable.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, right? Like if we don't have profit and we're not like we have cash blowing out the back window of our truck, guys, like you got to button up, you got to stop the bleeding before you add more, right? You got to get the systems down so you can add more and do it and make some money at it and then afford. The trouble with when we can't afford the right people, we end up getting C players, and C players cost us more than having them in the first place. But we can't afford A players.
Yep,
All right.
absolutely.
So there's a vicious cycle and circle that's so critical if you want to take the business to the next level. Book a call with us. Love to chat with you. I'll do it I run those myself. So happy to assess the business, get your free coaching session and that pricing tool. Otherwise, download that pricing guide. Is there any questions, Rick?
Yeah, there's some questions. So if you have a question, please add it. We've already got a bunch here. I'm going to start at the top. So Richard, you asked, what is a healthy markup on remodels under 70,000 between labor and materials?
Yeah, great question. You know, at the end of the day, we almost always know. I don't know your break even. If I knew that, I can tell you exactly, right? But when you understand your break even, and I work with, hundreds and hundreds. So remodel, we pretty much have to be at 40+% as a markup on a $70,000 remodel, right? Unless your break even is much lower, but we're typically not much lower than that 20 to 25 points already. So it makes it very difficult if we're not getting 40+%.
And Richard, if you need any follow-up on that, just put something in the comments. So Keith asked, I think kind of a follow-up question to this. Do you mean a 40% markup as a minimum?
As a minimum, yes.
As a minimum, okay. So
yeah,
Keith,
I mean, again, if you know your numbers, then we know exactly what we can achieve, right? But typical remodeler in a typical situation with a $70,000 project size, yes. As the project size grows, right, we get into 500 plus, yes, that percentage is coming down significantly. But that's also where it's going to increase our monthly dollars, which then brings our break even down. And this is why understanding and knowing the numbers in our business, being a financial look, our mastery series that I suggested earlier that we offer you guys, we have financial mastery in there and we have pricing mastery. Those two alone will change your life. It'll allow you to understand all this stuff that we just kind of went through on a much, much deeper scale.
Scott, you asked, in Randy's pricing examples, where is owner's compensation included? Is it in markup figure or net profit?
That's another, again, great question. It is 1000%. Please do not have it in net profit. You should be getting paid to run the business. You are an overhead to the business, provided you are working on the business and not in it. When you are working in it, which in other words means you are part of the cost of a project, right? So you as an owner, if you're part of a cost of the project, then we need to have that portion, which is sometimes extremely high, in our cost of goods, like a project manager, right? Now, if you are an overhead to the business, then you are working as a visionary in the business, you're a leader in the business, you're building the business, then you're going to be an overhead. But please do not have your salary coming out of net profit. Net profit is after all expenses, and you are an expense.
Thank you, Scott. Hopefully you got that answer you're looking for. If you need any clarification, just message us. Okay, Lance, you asked about a link to the other tools. I think all the tools you reviewed, Randy, were in the pricing guide, right?
Yeah, so the pricing guide has everything you need that we went through. And to get the other bonus tools like the free coaching session or the pricing for profit is book the business assessment, show up for the call, and we'll get you set up with both of those.
Yep. Okay. Hopefully that answered that. I'm going to share one other item here just on the front end when you're presenting pricing, something that I learned a long time ago. But if anybody else has any questions, please type them in. We got a couple more minutes left here, so we'll do that.
Sure.
But Randy, one of the things I noticed, and I talk to builders a lot, is like, how do you present pricing? And one of the things I learned early on is that when I am initially talking to a lead for the first time, I realized that I needed to do some price conditioning like immediately before I even had the phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked at it and I go, there was typically two ways to present a price. I could present a lump sum, and obviously that would include a cost plus, or it could be just a fixed contract. I could also present something where I had like base pricing plus options. And so I started out where we were selling semi-custom homes. And so we had a base price home, and then we would have options. We had higher markups on the options that we did on the base price, and we would try to average it all out. Now, what I learned though is that there was always something wrong with it. You know, if I presented a lump sum, everyone would say, well, it's too expensive. And then they would want me to break things down. And if I presented like a base price plus options, it was like people, you know, they wanted options to be in the base price, and they wanted things in the base price to be an option. And so what I came up with is that I created what's called the needs, wants, and wish list. And before I would ever start a conversation with any client that started their project, is I would have them identify what is a need, meaning that if you don't get this, you're not going to do the project. So what are those core things that are really driving them to want to remodel or build a new home? Then I would ask them, what do you want to have in this? And that would simply be, you know, it's a want. I really hope to get these, but it's not a deal breaker. And then finally, like, what are the wishes? What are the things that, you know, you could wish for? And so what I would do then is that I would have them create this list. And then when we would sit down either in front of the plan or we're walking through their home and talking about these things, I would just verify all of those. So they would actually give it to me ahead of time. And I would carry that through the entire design period right to contract, where I would present pricing in the way that was most important to them. What do you need? What do you want? And what do you wish for? And so that way we were collaborating, and they saw value in how that was presented because it was based on what was most important to them versus what was least important to them. I started converting a lot higher percentage of deals that way versus trying for me to dictate how I was going to present pricing. So just a little tip for you guys, ask them what do they need, want, and wish for.
Fabulous tip.
Yeah, before you ever talk about pricing. The other question I get sometimes too is like, hey, well, we meet with somebody, we go out, maybe do a site visit. I put together a budget and I email it to them. If that's the way you're doing things, boy, you're going to have a pretty low conversion rate. And what I mean by that is that you have to make the lead part of the process. In other words, there is a tipping point of where the lead comes to you and they ask for how much project can I get for how little money. Everybody wants the most for the least. It's human nature. Doesn't matter your price points. They're always going to start there. There's a tipping point where they ask you, what's the next step? Because they go from how much project can I get to how little money to, Randy, what's the process for me to identify how much project I can get and how much it's going to cost? So once they've bought your process, it means they trust and value you. And if you can incrementally have them make incremental commitments for incremental information, you're going to convert a much, much higher percentage, which means they're part of the process. You're collaborating. They're going to feel like they've got ownership, and your conversion rates are going to go much higher.
Again, fabulous tip. You know, what I hope everyone leaves with is the fact that typically we have to increase price, sometimes significantly, if we're going to be able to build a real team, grow, and scale. And so please just kind of start from the beginning, get the foundation right. If you've set up a call with us, fantastic. I'd love to walk through it. If you haven't, guys, at least get that download and start working through it and making sure you do the right things right.
So last chance here. I think unless there's any other questions, we're probably going to end the webinar. We're right at about the end of our time. Make sure you grab those links to get a call scheduled, that business assessment scheduled with Randy, and get that download. Otherwise, Randy, thank you so much for this information. I loved it. I was taking notes myself here. So this is very, very helpful. Great job of explaining this and kind of lifting the veil here behind some of these tricky questions.
Love it. Well, thanks for having me, Rick, and thanks for everyone hanging in for us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. God bless. We'll see you next time. And thanks again, Randy, and have a great rest of your day.